You said the family vacation was for everyone, I told my dad. It is, he smirked, but we didn't have enough rooms for your kids. I watched their beach photos, while my kids sat at home asking why Grandpa didn't want them. So I logged into the shared travel account, canceled every reservation, and requested a full refund to my card. An hour later, my parents screamed, "You just ruined the whole trip." I, 34M, want to start by saying, I'm not someone who does dramatic things. I pay my bills, I show up, I keep my head down. I've spent most of my adult life smoothing things over in my family because that's just what the oldest kid does. You absorb the dysfunction, and you call it love. But there's a line, and my father found it. It started about 3 months ago when my dad announced over a family group chat that he was planning a big family beach vacation. The kind of thing he'd been talking about for years, but never actually followed through on. This time felt different, because he'd already started researching resorts, sending links, asking everyone their availability for the last 2 weeks of July. I got excited. My kids, 8 and 11, had been going through a rough stretch because my wife and I had separated earlier in the year. Nothing was final, nothing was ugly, but the house felt different, and the kids felt it. A family trip sounded like exactly what they needed. Cousins, grandparents, ocean air. I started looking forward to it, more than I'd looked forward to anything in a long time. My sister, her husband, and their 2 kids were in. My younger brother, still single, was in. My parents were organizing everything. I told my dad I was absolutely in, and asked him to count me and my 2 kids. He said great. That was it. Just great. I didn't think anything of it. For the next month, the group chat was alive with resort photos, activity ideas, dinner reservation discussions. My kids saw me looking at the beach pictures and started asking questions, and I made the mistake of telling them about it. My 11-year-old immediately asked if they could try parasailing. My 8-year-old wanted to build sandcastles every single morning. I let them get excited, because I was excited too. Then the chat went quiet on my end, not on everyone else's end. I noticed my dad was still sending updates, my sister was responding, my brother was chiming in, but whenever I asked a direct question in the group chat, it got either a short answer or nothing at all. I figured it was just the noise of planning. About 6 weeks before the trip, I messaged my dad privately asking about logistics. I needed to know if we were flying together or meeting there, what the room situation looked like, whether I should book my own flights, or if he had a family rate through a travel account he'd set up years ago that all of us had access to. He used it for points and coordination whenever the family traveled anywhere together. He took 2 days to respond. Then he said we should talk on the phone. That's when I felt the first drop in my stomach. The call lasted maybe 12 minutes. My dad started off talking about expenses, about how the resort was more than he'd anticipated, about how rooms were limited and they had to make some decisions about space. I stayed quiet and let him get to it. He told me there weren't enough rooms for everyone. I asked him what that meant. He said it the way he says everything uncomfortable, with this breezy confidence like the problem is obvious and I'm slow for not seeing it. He told me that with his and my mom's room, my sister's family needing their own room, and my brother, the numbers just didn't work out for adding my kids too. I sat with that for a second. Then I pointed out that I was still welcome, presumably, just not my kids. He said the trip was really designed around the full families, meaning my sister's intact household, my brother who was easy to fit anywhere. He said maybe next time when things in my life were more settled. I told him the trip was for everyone. That's what he'd said in the group chat. Family vacation for everyone. He smirked. I couldn't see his face, but I could hear it in his voice. He said it was for everyone, but they didn't have enough rooms for my kids. I didn't explode. I didn't cry. I said I understood, and I got off the phone. I sat in my car in the driveway for about 40 minutes after that call. My kids were inside. I could hear them through the window, some cartoon playing, my 8-year-old laughing at something. And all I could think was that I had to go in there and look at 2 children who had already asked me twice that week when they were going to see Grandpa, and somehow not let them see what I was feeling. I went inside. I got through dinner. I got through bedtime. Then I sat on my couch at 11 at night and really thought about what had happened. The trip wasn't full. The rooms weren't the issue. My sister has 2 kids, same as me. Her family of 4 got a room. My brother, 1 person, got accommodated. If it was purely a space issue, any reasonable person would have figured out a way. A second room for me and my kids would have solved it entirely. My kids are not loud, not difficult, not the kind of children anyone has ever complained about at a family gathering. The difference wasn't space. The difference was that my family had quietly decided that my children, during a period when their parents were separated, were a complication. Maybe they thought the energy would be off. Maybe my dad didn't want to manage the question of where I slept relative to my wife who wasn't coming. Maybe it was simpler than that, and he just didn't want to pay for an extra room. Whatever it was, he'd looked at my kids and made a calculation. I didn't say anything for 2 weeks. I watched the group chat. The trip was coming together beautifully according to everyone else. My dad posted a photo of the resort's infinity pool. My sister sent a laughing emoji about how they were all going to need a vacation from the vacation. My brother said he'd already researched the best seafood spots nearby. Normal family excitement, the kind I used to feel before that phone call. I noticed no one in that chat mentioned me. Not once. No one said it was a shame I couldn't make it, or that they wished the kids could come, or any of the things you'd say if you actually felt bad about leaving someone out. I had been quietly removed from the plan, and the conversation had closed over me like water over a stone. My kids, meanwhile, were still asking about the trip. My 11-year-old had started following his cousin on some app and saw that she'd posted about the beach vacation coming up. He came to me one evening and asked, very carefully, why Grandpa didn't want them there. I had no answer that wouldn't either break his heart or force me to lie. I told him that sometimes plans change, and we'd do our own trip this summer. He nodded slowly in the way kids do when they know they're being managed and they're too kind to call you on it. That was the moment I stopped trying to find the charitable explanation for my father's behavior. Here's the part I need to explain carefully, because I know how this looks. Years ago, my dad set up a shared travel account for the family. It was his idea. He used a travel booking platform that allowed multiple users under one account, originally so my mom could manage reservations when he was traveling for work. Over time, he added me and my sister to the account because we'd help coordinate family trips, and it made logistics easier. The account had a shared card on file, but the platform also allowed individual users to set their own payment methods for their own bookings. I still had full access to this account. I had never misused it. I had booked my own trips through it occasionally, and always paid for my own portion. There was nothing in how the account worked that prevented me from making changes to existing reservations, including cancellations. The reservations for the beach trip were all in there. I could see them. 3 rooms at the resort, 2 activity bookings, a dinner reservation at a restaurant on the boardwalk. I looked at them for a long time. Then I looked up the cancellation policy. Full refund if canceled more than 30 days before the trip. We were at 33 days out. I thought about my 8-year-old asking why Grandpa didn't want them. I thought about my 11-year-old nodding slowly because he understood more than I'd given him credit for. I logged into the account. I canceled every reservation, all 3 rooms, both activity bookings, the dinner reservation. For each one, I updated the refund destination to my card, which was a legitimate option on the platform since I was an account user. The total refund was going to take 5 to 7 business days. I closed the laptop. The call came 57 minutes later. My dad's number. I let it ring. Then my mom's number. I let that ring too. Then my sister. Then my brother. I sat there and watched my phone light up 6 times in a row, and I didn't answer any of them. I got a text from my dad that was a single sentence asking what I had done. I got a longer text from my mom saying they'd tried to pull up the resort reservation to check something and found it had been canceled, and asking if it was a mistake, hoping it was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. I texted my dad back. I told him that I'd canceled the reservations and requested the refunds. I told him the refunds would go to my card since I'd updated the payment destination, and I was happy to discuss next steps. He called again. I answered. I've heard my father raise his voice at me before, usually when I was a teenager, and had done something he considered disrespectful. I hadn't heard that register in probably 15 years. He was using it now. He told me I'd just ruined the whole trip, that deposits had been planned around those rooms, that my mother had been looking forward to this for months, that my sister's family was devastated, that I had acted like a child over something that wasn't personal, and I had destroyed something that took months to plan. I let him finish. Then I told him very calmly that I'd watched their beach photos in the group chat, while my kids sat at home asking why Grandpa didn't want them. I told him that my 11-year-old had seen his cousin posting about the trip and had come to me asking that exact question. I told him that I hadn't raised my voice, hadn't made a scene, hadn't sent a single message to the group chat about any of it. I had simply used my legitimate access to an account I'd been given access to, made changes to reservations, and requested refunds through the proper channels. He said that wasn't the point. I asked him what the point was then. I asked him to explain to me what the point was when you exclude your grandchildren from a family vacation and call it a logistics issue. He didn't have an answer for that. He pivoted. He said I could have talked to him, that we could have figured something out, that this was an overreaction. I told him we had talked 12 minutes on the phone, where he'd explained, very smoothly, that there wasn't room for my kids. I told him I didn't recall him offering to figure something out at that time. I told him the window for figuring something out had been the 6 weeks between his announcement and when I'd canceled the reservations, and during that entire window, no one in my family had so much as mentioned my kid's absence in the group chat. He hung up. My sister called about 20 minutes after that. She was upset, but she was trying to be reasonable, which is her default mode. She asked me if I understood what I'd done, if I realized this wasn't just about the trip but about what I was doing to the family, if I knew how hurt Mom was. I told her I understood all of it. I told her I also wanted her to understand what it felt like to have your kids excluded from a family event and then watch everyone else celebrate in a group chat, like it was nothing. I asked her if she would have been okay with that if it had been her kids. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said that wasn't the same situation. I asked her why. She said my situation was more complicated, with the separation and everything. I asked her what exactly about my kids, ages 8 and 11, was complicated. I asked her if they'd been loud at the last family gathering, if they'd caused any problems, if there was any actual behavioral reason they'd been excluded. She couldn't name one. She said it wasn't about that. I said I knew it wasn't about that. That was the problem. She said she needed to think, and she'd call me later. She hasn't called back yet. My brother reached me the next morning. He's the youngest, and we've always been closest. He didn't come in hot. He just asked me to walk him through what happened from my side. And I did. When I finished, he was quiet for a while. Then he said he hadn't really thought about how it must have looked from where I was standing. He said he'd just been caught up in the excitement and hadn't stopped to think about what it meant that I wasn't in any of the planning conversations. He said that when he'd asked Dad early on if I was coming, Dad had said I had some stuff going on and might not make it, and he'd taken that at face value. That hit me. My dad had already been managing the narrative with everyone else. He hadn't even let it be awkward in the group chat. He'd pre-explained my absence in a way that made it my problem, my stuff going on, before I even knew I was being excluded. My brother said he felt bad. He said he didn't know what I'd done with the reservations was possible, but that he understood why I'd done it. He said he wasn't going to pretend it wasn't a nuclear move, but he also said he got it. That was all I needed from him. I didn't need him to validate me or take my side. I just needed one person in my family to actually look at what had happened. It's been 4 days since the cancellations. The refunds are processing. The trip is, as far as I can tell, genuinely in chaos. My parents have been trying to rebook, but the resort had a limited number of rooms at their rate, and those rooms are now gone. They've found alternative accommodation, but it's smaller, less convenient, and more expensive because they're now outside the 30-day window on most other properties in that area. My dad sent me one more message, 2 days after the original blow-up. It was long. He said I had shown my true character. He said he was deeply disappointed in me. He said that whatever issues I had with how the trip was planned, what I'd done was unforgivable, and that I should not expect things to go back to normal between us. I read it twice. Then I wrote back. I told him I agreed that things wouldn't go back to normal. I told him that for years I'd absorbed a lot of things from this family without making waves, because I thought that was what being a good son looked like. I told him that watching my kids be excluded, and then watching the family chat fill up with happy vacation content while my kids sat at home had clarified something for me. The version of normal I'd been trying to preserve wasn't actually working for me or for my children. I told him that I hoped he'd think about what he'd communicated to his grandchildren by making the decision he made, because they were going to remember it, even if he'd convinced himself it was just a logistics issue. I didn't send anything after that. I haven't heard from him. I'm taking my kids on a trip next month. Nothing as elaborate as what my parents were planning, but somewhere with a beach and water and enough space to breathe. My 11-year-old has already started looking up things to do. My 8-year-old asked me this morning if we'd be staying right on the water, and I told her we would, and the smile on her face was the first uncomplicated thing I'd felt in months. I'm not going to tell you I have no regrets about how this played out. Using that account the way I did was aggressive. It created real disruption for people, including my brother and my sister's kids who didn't do anything wrong. If I could go back, I'd probably still do it. Because I think at some point you have to stop absorbing and start responding. But I'm not going to pretend it was clean. What I am going to tell you is that I'm done managing my father's comfort at the expense of my own children's dignity. My kids didn't need a perfect vacation. They needed to not watch a group of adults quietly decide they weren't worth accommodating. That's the damage, and no amount of reframing it as logistics changes that. My dad said the family vacation was for everyone, and he was right. It just turned out his definition of everyone didn't include the grandchildren whose parents were going through something hard, because inconvenience is apparently a reason to exclude 8 and 11-year-olds from a beach trip. I logged into that travel account and I changed his definition. I think that was fair. Update. My mom called me last week. Not to argue. She called to say she'd been thinking about what I'd said in my message to my dad, specifically the part about what my kids would remember. She told me she was sorry. She said she'd known the decision about the rooms was wrong when they made it, and she hadn't said anything, and that was on her. That call was 10 minutes long, and it undid a lot of what the last month had knotted up in my chest. I told her I wasn't looking for an apology from her specifically. I told her I understood she wasn't always in a position to override my dad's decisions, and I knew how that dynamic worked. She said that wasn't an excuse, and she was right. I didn't push it. She asked if she could take my kids somewhere, just her and them, maybe something small, a day trip or a museum, just so they knew they were wanted. I said I'd think about it. I'm gonna say yes. Not for my dad, not for the family's image of itself, but because my kids love their grandmother, and she loves them. And I don't think she made that call. I think she went along with it. Those are different things, and I'm capable of telling them apart. My dad hasn't reached out. I don't know if he will. The trip apparently ended up happening, scaled down, messier than planned. My brother texted me a photo from the beach. Just the two of us, the way we used to send each other stuff when we were younger. He didn't say anything about the rest of it. Neither did I. We didn't need to. My kids and I leave for our trip in 11 days. My 8-year-old has already packed her bag,